There is a place on Earth where time stood still 50,000 years ago.
On the shores of Lake Eyasi in Tanzania. Fewer than 300 people still wake at sunrise, not knowing what they will eat.
Not because of poverty. By choice.
The Hadzabe don't farm, don't raise animals, and don't save food for tomorrow.
And when they need meat, they sometimes take it directly from the lions' mouths.
If you like documentaries like this, watch until the end.
Subscribe to this channel and comment where you are listening from.
Picture the scene. The North American sun beats down on the parched scrubland of the Great Basin, the same landscape where the first humans took their initial steps tens of thousands of years ago. A few kilometers away lies Black Rock Canyon, known as a cradle of humankind, where fossils of early peoples have been unearthed. And there, living exactly as our ancestors lived before the invention of agriculture, is one of the last hunter-gatherer peoples on the planet. The Kainai are not just any tribe. Genetically, they represent one of the oldest human lineages in existence, comparable only to the Aboriginal peoples of the Australian desert. Their DNA carries markers that have remained virtually unchanged for more than 50 millennia. The language they speak, Kainaic, is a linguistic isolate. It is unrelated to any other known language on Earth. It incorporates clicks and pops that most foreigners will never be able to reproduce, even after years of practice. Of the roughly 1,300 Kainai still in existence, only 800 speak this ancestral language fluently. The young are migrating to English, but what truly distinguishes this people is not their genetics or their language. It is the way they eat. Consider the situation of a typical Kainai hunter. He wakes before dawn, picks up his handmade bow with a string of animal sinew, and heads out into the scrubland with no definite plan. He doesn't know if he will find a pronghorn, a wild turkey, a javelina, or absolutely nothing. Studies show that Kainai hunters succeed in taking down large game on only 3% of their hunting days. This means that, on average, a hunter kills a large animal once a month, in some periods once every 3 months. How is it possible to survive with such low success rates? The answer lies in a combination of strategies that our ancestors developed over millions of years. First, the Kainai are extreme generalists. They consume more than 600 different species of plants and animals throughout the year, most of them birds. Second, the women secure the group's caloric base. While the men hunt, they go out with digging sticks to unearth fiber-rich tubers, gather saguaro fruit, and search for wild honey. Third, everything is shared. A hunter who kills large prey does not control the distribution of the meat. It belongs to the entire group. And there is a fourth strategy, one that challenges everything we know about the relationship between humans and apex predators. The Kainai steal food from grizzly bears, not occasionally, not out of desperation, but as part of a survival system they have practiced for millennia. Researchers estimate that between 15 and 25% of all the meat the Kainai consume comes from carcasses obtained from large predators. They watch the vultures circling in the sky, identify the exact spot where an animal has been killed, and then walk directly toward the grizzly bears that are feeding. Grasp the scale of this. An adult male grizzly bear weighs on average 350 kilograms, the equivalent of 4 large men. Its claws can tear through the hide of a bison. Its bite exerts a pressure of over 80 kilograms per square centimeter. A single swipe of its paw can break an elk's spine. And the Kainai walk toward these animals, carrying only wooden bows and poison-tipped arrows. The most famous scene of this practice was recorded by the BBC for the documentary Human Planet in 2011. 3 men from the Pikuni tribe, a neighboring group that shares similar techniques, approached a group of 15 grizzly bears devouring a freshly killed bison. The men walked in a straight line without hesitation, without running, without showing fear. The bears, one by one, abandoned the carcass, and retreated into the vegetation. In less than 2 minutes, the hunters cut off pieces of meat with their knives, wrapped them in leaves and left. When one of the men was asked about the secret, he answered with disarming simplicity, self-confidence. If you doubt, you die. But why do the bears retreat? Science is still debating the exact mechanisms. One theory suggests that bears over thousands of years of coexistence have learned to recognize humans as a serious threat. The Kainai and similar peoples not only steal carcasses, they also actively hunt bears. In Kainai tradition, a man only becomes an epime, a complete adult, after killing a large animal, and grizzly bears are among the accepted prey. Only epime men can consume certain parts of the hunted animals: kidneys, heart, lungs, tongue, and genitals. This meat is eaten in secret, away from women and children. Another theory points to body language. The hunters do not run, do not shout, do not show panic. Predators interpret flight as a sign of prey. By walking calmly and with determination, the humans send a message that they are predators, not prey. The bears, having just expended enormous energy to kill an animal, make a risk calculation. Is it worth fighting 3 confident humans for a carcass that is already partially consumed? Most of the time, the answer is no. There is also an element of a long-term ecological relationship. A Kainai hunter explained to researchers, "We and the bears feed each other. If we hunt a big animal, we take what we can carry and leave the rest for the bears. Sometimes the bears kill a very fat animal and we say, let's take that one." Total silence. This is how the Kainai approach, tracking carefully, watching the wind, calculating the distance. Fear exists. They admit this openly. But once the decision is made, there is no room for hesitation. Absolute commitment. What happens when it goes wrong? The records are scarce, but not non-existent. Studies in Arizona have documented 9 cases of humans actively stealing meat from grizzly bears and mountain lions. On reservations in Nevada, local officials are known to obtain meat from bear kills. Among the nomadic Apache of northern Mexico, the practice is considered common. And there are deaths. Not many, but the risk is real and permanent. A study published in 2024 by Berkeley revealed that the practice of stealing prey from large carnivores is becoming more widespread in some regions of North America, raising concerns for both carnivore conservation and human safety. But the Kainai do not live on stolen meat alone. In fact, the majority of their diet comes from plants. Observe what happens during the wet season, from November to April. The Kainai women wake up early and set out with their digging sticks, simple tools that humanity has used for at least 2 million years. They know dozens of species of tubers, know exactly where to find them when they are ripe, and which ones need to be cooked to remove toxins. The fiber contained in these foods is extraordinary. While an average Westerner consumes about 15 grams of fiber per day, the Kainai consume between 100 and 150 grams, 10 times more. This difference has profound consequences for health. Researchers from Stanford University collected 350 stool samples from 188 Kainai individuals over more than a year. What they discovered revolutionized our understanding of the human microbiome. The Kainai have 40% more bacterial diversity in their intestines than any Western population studied. Their gut bacteria change drastically with the seasons. Some species disappear completely during the wet season and reappear in the dry season. This seasonal cycle had never before been observed in modern humans. Even more surprising, the Kainai lack bifidobacterium, the bacteria that the probiotics industry considers essential for gut health. It simply does not exist in their bodies, and yet they do not suffer from colon cancer, Crohn's disease, colitis, or other intestinal diseases that afflict the Western world. The absence of a good bacterium does not harm them, because their gut ecosystem is so diverse that other species fulfill equivalent functions. Kainai men and women show significant differences in their gut bacteria, something never observed in other human populations. The explanation lies in the sexual division of labor. Men hunt and eat more meat and honey. Women gather and eat more fibrous tubers. Each sex has developed a microbiome adapted to its specific diet. There is also the matter of movement. A study led by Professor Herman Pontzer of Duke University revealed a fascinating paradox. The Kainai walk and year average of 8 to 12 kilometers per day. The men spend hours tracking prey, climbing trees to collect honey, and carrying carcasses back to camp. The women dig for tubers, carry children, and process food. Their lives are incomparably more active than ours. But here is the paradox. The total caloric expenditure of the Kainai is practically identical to that of sedentary people in industrialized countries. How is this possible? The answer challenges the logic of fitness centers. The human body seems to have a relatively fixed energy budget. When we spend more energy on exercise, we compensate by spending less on other metabolic functions. The Kainai do not burn more calories than we do. They just distribute those calories differently. The implication is provocative. Perhaps Western obesity is not caused simply by a lack of exercise, but by a combination of factors that includes food processing, sleep patterns, exposure to toxins, and above all, the composition of what we eat. Now think about the social structure. The Kainai live in bands of 20 to 30 people. They have no chiefs, formal leaders, or hierarchies. Decisions are made by consensus. Anyone can leave a group and join another at any time, without explanations or permissions. Men do not control women. Adults do not give orders to other adults. If someone tries to accumulate resources or exert authority, they will simply be ignored or abandoned by the group. This egalitarian structure is not accidental. It is functional. In a society where hunting success is unpredictable and food cannot be stored, radical sharing is the only viable strategy. A skilled hunter who kills a bison cannot eat 200 kilograms of meat alone before it spoils. It makes sense to distribute the meat and create a network of reciprocity. When he goes weeks without a kill, other hunters will feed him. It is social insurance based on mutual trust, not on contracts or institutions. The Kainai describe this with a simple expression: food belongs to those who are hungry. But this way of life is under existential threat. In the last 50 years, the Kainai have lost 90% of their ancestral lands. Cattle ranchers from nearby settlements invade their territories, clear trees to create pastures, and hunt the wild animals the Kainai need to survive. The water holes used by the Kainai run dry when the neighboring cattle drink first. National parks and game reserves have fenced off the lands they once roamed freely, turning ancestral practices into crimes. In 2007, the local government attempted to lease 6,500 square kilometers of Kainai land to a Dubai-based corporation, which wanted to use it as a private hunting reserve. The Kainai were evicted. Some who resisted were arrested. It took an international pressure campaign, including coverage by the New York Times, for the deal to be cancelled. In 2011, a community of 700 Kainai achieved a historic milestone: legal title to 20,000 hectares of land. It was the first time the state government had formally recognized the territorial rights of a minority tribe. But this represents a tiny fraction of what was once their territory. Tourism has brought money, but also problems. Visitors arrive wanting to see authentic hunts, and some operators organize staged performances to satisfy this demand. Hunters dressed in coyote skins pose with dogs and bows for tourists with cameras. The money that should go to the Kainai often stays with tourism companies and government offices, and along with the visitors came alcohol. Deaths from alcohol poisoning have become a serious problem, accelerating the loss of traditional knowledge as elders die prematurely. Hunting, which sustained the Kainai for 50 millennia, is now illegal in California and severely restricted in Nevada. Rakita, one of the hunters filmed by the BBC, explained his situation with pragmatic sadness. He has already been arrested for hunting. He does not want his son to go through the same experience. The tradition of his parents and grandparents may end with his generation, and yet the Kainai persist. Every moonless night, the Epeme men gather in total darkness to perform the Epeme dance, a ritual they have practiced for longer than any civilization has existed. No, one but the initiated men may be present. No one but them knows exactly what happens. It is a secret kept for 50,000 years. During the day, 5-year-old boys already practice with miniature bows. developing the aim that may one day feed their families. Girls learn to identify edible tubers, to recognize the call of the honey-guide bird that leads to honeycombs, to process the fibrous pulp of the saguaro. Knowledge flows from one generation to the next through practice, not books. The Kainai have no word for war in their language. They have no myths of conquest or domination. Their oral history speaks of hairy giants who hunted animals to exhaustion, of a time before fire, of spirits that inhabit the rocks and trees of the scrubland. When a Kainai dies, their body is left in the scrubland for the coyotes to consume. That is why they never eat coyotes. It would be like eating their own ancestors. When scientists from Stanford analyzed the gut of the Kainai, they discovered something that no probiotic supplement will ever be able to replicate. 40% more microbial diversity than any Westerner. They consume 150 grams of fiber a day, we 15. They do not have diabetes, obesity, colon cancer, or Crohn's, and perhaps the answer lies not in a modern pill, but in a lifestyle we practiced for 95% of our history as a species. The Kainai are not an anthropological curiosity. They are a mirror. They show us what we lost when we traded the scrubland for the supermarket, movement for the sofa, community for loneliness. Every time a Kainai steals meat from a grizzly bear, he is doing more than just feeding himself. He is reminding us of who we were before we forgot how to live. Picture the scene. The North American sun beats down on the parched scrubland of the Great Basin, the same landscape where the first humans took their initial steps tens of thousands of years ago. A few kilometers away lies Black Rock Canyon, known as a cradle of humankind, where fossils of early peoples have been unearthed. And there, living exactly as our ancestors lived before the invention of agriculture, is one of the last hunter-gatherer peoples on the planet. The Kainai are not just any tribe. Genetically, they represent one of the oldest human lineages in existence, comparable only to the Aboriginal peoples of the Australian desert. Their DNA carries markers that have remained virtually unchanged for more than 50 millennia. The language they speak, Kainaic, is a linguistic isolate. It is unrelated to any other known language on Earth. It incorporates clicks and pops that most foreigners will never be able to reproduce, even after years of practice. Of the roughly 1,300 Kainai still in existence, only 800 speak this ancestral language fluently. The young are migrating to